Hi everyone, Jordan Schroeder here, a managing CISO at Hephaestus. We had an interesting situation that was submitted to me, and I wanted to take this opportunity to show you the difference between the different tools when you have something that you suspect to be really malicious, and you're trying to figure out what's actually going on underneath the hood. So what was submitted to me was a URL, and the person said that they clicked it several times, and every time they clicked it, I know, they're clicking unknown and potentially malicious URLs repeatedly, but let's set that aside for a second. That they took the, whenever they clicked the URL, what happened was that a new web page would come up. So it was Google or CNN or image sites or something like that, and nothing bad seemed to be happening. So they knew something was sketchy, they knew something was probably going wrong, but they didn't know how to analyze it. And they said they actually tried to get the source code for the website to see if there was anything in the JavaScript or in their source code to figure out what was going on. But they didn't see anything strange. So there were some odd requests for JavaScript files on different sites, but nothing looked obviously bad or wrong. So they were asking for some help. So what I did is what I typically do is I put the URL into VirusTotal, and VirusTotal has a scanner for files, of course. Everyone knows about that one, but they also have a URL scanner as well. They'll connect to it and run some really basic scans and figure out if anything was sketchy as a result. Or what the findings were. It also does a bit of a reputation scan as well. So putting the URL in, as you see here, it's perfectly clean according to VirusTotal. So you've got clean results all the way through. Nothing shows as bad. There's a little community note here where it's also saying that it also looks just fine. Actually, I'll get to that in a second. This is actually me. I used a couple different sites to analyze the behavior here. One of them was Joe's Security, and they said it was a little malicious because it kept on making these strange requests out to other websites, and it lists them here. In VirusTotal, I actually didn't know it did that. That's my scan. So I'm certainly not satisfied because you have a link that's obviously doing something weird and strange. The code looks a little strange, but nothing pops out as being obviously malicious. So what do? Well, you need to be able to capture each request, each action that link is making and everything that's doing. And the way to do that is to use a sandbox. A sandbox allows the file or the URL to execute and do its thing, and it just watches every step of the way, records them, and provides some kind of a confidence level in what each of those steps might be doing to you. And so probably the most useful sandbox for this case is something called Cuckoo. Cuckoo comes as a program you can download and install and set up in your own servers, and that can be a little tricky. It comes as pre-configured virtual machines you can just dump into your virtualized environment. That's great. There's also, I believe, there's Docker containers as well. There's also, for those of you who are in the know and were in the breach management workshop we did for the technical folks, there is cuckoo.ee. This is set up by an Estonian site and a research institution, and it's freely available. You can upload files and URLs, and it'll go through its process. And take a look at the difference here between VirusTotal, which showed it was absolutely clean, and then a sandbox review. So you see here it is very suspicious, and it performs some HTTP requests. You see all the different sites that it was reaching out to. These are the sites that the end user sees as, I clicked this link and then I went to CNN or Google or whatever. So it shows those. It shows the data that was sent out, which is also strange and interesting. You've got some really interesting scenarios here where it's trying to install and load things on your file system. We haven't got to the red things yet, as you'll notice. Overwrites files. That's also probably a really bad sign. They're still in the orange, in the yellow here. Potentially malicious URLs found in the results of things that were left in memory. And then, well, here we go into the really interesting bits. It makes DNS queries outwards. Now, this is not necessarily just the URL. This is not just the thing that you initially clicked on. This is tracking everything that's happened after the URL was clicked. So what we've got here is code that's actually running on the sandbox, and it's analyzing that as well. Alternate data streams are set up. If you know what those are, that's its own interesting topic all by itself. So once you've got alternate data streams being created, you know something very bad is going on. And you have a lot of files that are being encrypted and being written back to disk. So what you have here, and an attempt to exploit Internet Explorer. Using a known exploit. So what you have here, even though to the end user, who, if you remember, clicked on it several times, what you have here is a scenario where the URL is reaching out, pulling information. It's pulling, obviously, malware, and in this case it looks like ransomware, executing it on the box, trying to exploit and crack open Internet Explorer to do more malicious things, and you have all of this really, really bad stuff happening, and we only saw that by running it in a sandbox. If you remember, VirusTotal thought it was perfectly clean. So sandboxes can be extremely useful in your analyses. You don't have to understand what each one of these things does or means, what an alternate data stream actually means and what that is. You have enough here, even with the overview information, to realize that this is bad, this is likely malware, and you should be triggering then your remediation steps to make sure that whoever clicked on it multiple times isn't going to have a bad day later on. Because remember, sometimes bad things don't happen right away. Malware likes to stay low key. So the malware and the ransomware may not actually trigger or do something until later on. So remediation steps are really important here. And now with a tool like Cuckoo and cuckoo.ee, you know exactly what remediation steps to engage in. All right, thank you very much. This has been Jordan from Hephaestus.